This is the Hidden Why podcast, episode 1086, my interview with Jotham Stein, and we're discussing his book, Negotiate Like a CEO. Enjoy. Jotham, welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. Great to have you here today.
Great to be on your show, Lee. Thanks for having me on.
For those that are listening, there is a nice backdrop there. You've got a beautiful fireplace. Whereabouts in the world are you?
I'm actually in Half Moon Bay, California, on the coast, about 3 blocks from the Pacific Ocean.
Wow, amazing. What a location, huh?
Yeah, I'm speaking to you from my home office. I have an office in Palo Alto, California. I have one in Chicago as well, and in New York, but in Silicon Valley is where Palo Alto is, and that's where I practice, started practicing and principally practice, although I do represent people across the country and have offices in Chicago and New York.
So you're practicing, are you a lawyer or operate a law firm? Is that right?
Yeah, I own my own law firm, have some lawyers who work for me, and I am a practicing lawyer. Been doing that for more than 25 years, representing entrepreneurs and executives and people at all levels in their careers, actually.
Okay. And so you started off in Silicon Valley?
I started off in Silicon Valley because I went to Stanford Law School. I'm actually originally from the East Coast of the United States, which is 3,000 miles or 5,000 something kilometers away. But I went to Stanford, and once I got here, I never left, except I took a digression to Chicago, which is why I have a Chicago office for 11 years.
So you got multiple offices?
Yeah, one here in Palo Alto, or in my home office when I want to go to the beach, which is frequently, and so I work out of my home office often. Palo is not too far away. That's obviously the heart of Silicon Valley, and I have office in Chicagoland, and then in New York State. Okay,
curiosity just kills me. So it's what is it about Silicon Valley? Like, tell us about your experience there. 25 years. What have you seen? Your experience, I suppose, from start to now.
Well, I've seen almost, I always say, well, now I learned something new, but I've seen quite a few experiences from a lot of the corner cases all the way to almost anything you read about or hear about in Silicon Valley in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of starting companies, in terms of having good results, in terms of having bad results. It's the reason why I wrote the book, Negotiate Like a CEO. It's to help people after seeing this so much what's going on. I figured there's so many people out there whose life is starting a company or is working at a company. It's a career, and they have no idea how to protect themselves from the downsides that can happen, which can happen lots and frequently. It happens all the time, happening right now to someone. And so that's why I wrote a book, the book, because I'd seen everything. You could see, I'm sure there are more things to be invented in both in the upsides and downsides. So I don't want to be too arrogant about it, but I've seen quite a bit. No hair on my head. And so I thought, okay, let's help people write a book for entrepreneurs, for executives, for anybody who's starting out in the career, mid-level executives, to really open their eyes. So they can go, and if they have any leverage at all, the theme in the book is protect yourself. If you're starting a company, your dream, your desire is your company. You want to grow your company, but you got to watch out for those people who might be investing in your company, whether it's a small family business and it's your brother or whatever, or whether it's you have a much larger goal in taking an outside capital. Same thing with employees. It's a little different probably in Australia to protect yourself for employees, but certainly across America, lots of employees who have leverage should do their best to protect themselves if they can.
So really looking for those executives or entrepreneurs that are starting a business, is that sort of when they're setting up in that stage? Is that what the book's sort of tailored for?
Actually, throughout their career, because, for example, using an entrepreneur might start a business, and after 2 or 3 years might need to protect him or herself against, say, an investor who might be putting in money, and the goal of the investor might be someday to take away the business from the entrepreneur, as an example. If we're using an employee, regardless of the level of employee, if an employee gets a promotion, for example, they might have more leverage to negotiate. If they're worried about a change of control and them being fired, for example, where one company gets acquired by another company, even in the middle of their career, they might find it very useful. But in the beginning, before everybody starts out, I mean, it's probably the best book you can ever have if you're going into business when you graduate from undergraduate, from college, because it'll set you up the rest of your career, what to look out for. And even if you can't negotiate early on because you have no leverage, at least you'll go in with your eyes wide open.
Okay. Yeah, good to know. So if we're listening to this entrepreneur, starting business or in a business, what are the things you typically find people overlook as far as protecting themselves? I mean, you've probably got a whole bunch of things that they overlook, but what are some of the key points?
The thing they overlook is that things don't always go well, and you might not be there. Even though it's your own metaphorical baby, it's your own company, you might not be there a year, 2, 5 years later, because someone else might get control of your baby, your metaphorical baby, and push you out. And so they overlook that reality. And because they overlook the reality, they don't protect themselves. They don't get, many times they don't even read the documents, entrepreneurs starting out. And you can take it from a family, even a family business. So we can move out of the sort of venture capital finance, private equity finance, large investment finance, even in small family-owned businesses. You should often think about your exit, how you might leave the company, or how you might buy out your partner from the company if things go wrong. Because life changes, people change, experience changes, and things don't always go as well as you might imagine. So that's really what they're overlooking. And when they overlook the perspective that things might go wrong for them, and they might not be there to watch their baby go public, for example, they might be on the sidelines. If they knew that in the beginning and didn't overlook it, they would be able to be in a much different mindset and be able to
sort of planning ahead for those worst case scenarios that might eventuate in the business life.
Yeah, exactly. Plan from the very beginning, or just listen. We all hope everything goes really well in life, and we all hope that every relationship we have, personal and professional, goes well. But it sometimes doesn't work that way. And when you're working, when you're talking about an entrepreneurship or a company, you're talking about somebody who's invested their life, not just their money, but their emotions and their talents and their expectations and their desires in a company. And so you just have to be aware that the company may not look the same in 3 or 4 years, and you might not have control of it. And so my idea is message of the book is look out for number one, look out for yourself when you start your company, and protect yourself if you have any ability at all to do that.
But I mean, it's obviously the law side of things is probably the nitty gritty that I don't want to really go into. I'll leave that to you. Thank you. But do you consult with people on this basis and sort of highlight these things? And can we put things in place now, or do we have to wait until that comes and just have an awareness of what could happen?
No, the problem is that the potholes of your problems, of an entrepreneur's problems, or even an employee's problems, can be here now. But you wouldn't realize that unless you had somebody who's a wizened old guy or wizened old woman who's been there before and seen the bad things. And so you want to be, the whole purpose of my book is learn about your potholes now. Even if you can't do anything about them now, learn about them, because they can exist now. So what do I mean by that? If you start a company and early on, you take an outside investment. Well, an investor who's sophisticated knows sort of the way a life cycle of a company, and knows what might happen down the road, and therefore knows what to put in the documents. When they don't just give you money, right? You got to sign documents for the money, and they know what to put in there to protect the investor. Well, that's a potential pothole for you. And if you, starting out a company, have no idea about that pothole, you're going into a relationship, in this case, a professional business relationship, without full information. And so you might as well have full information, which is the whole point of my book. And if you have any leverage, as people often do when they take an outside investment, you can hopefully protect yourself. I mean, and what does protection mean? Protection means, in the case of an entrepreneur, well, will you be in control of the company down the road? Will you always have a seat on the board of directors down the road? If somebody is going to have more power than you, will you get your equity? The equity is another name for stock or ordinary shares. I'm not sure what they call it in Australia, or profits interest. Make sure you get that, because oftentimes investors require, as part of their investment, that entrepreneurs revest their shares. So they have to work for those shares again. But if those entrepreneurs get fired while they're working for the shares they once owned completely, they won't have as many shares in the company. Just using some examples, and it's just business, and it's potholes that exist. And the entrepreneur, like I said, he or she dreams about the company, and they're really good at building a company. Doesn't matter what it is. Could be Wi-Fi, could be internet games, it could be retail, whatever the security, whatever they're building, that's their dream and that's what they're good at. So they're not so good at knowing how to protect themselves, and what to watch out for, and the potholes. Taking the other perspective, somebody who's giving investment, they do it professionally. They know what the potholes are, and they know how to take advantage of them. So you want to have full information and start now if you can.
Okay, so interesting. The title of the book, "Negotiate Like a CEO." Why did you choose that title for the book?
Sure. I can't speak for Australia. I want to be clear, because I don't want to have like thousands of people calling you and saying, "Lee, what the hell are you talking about?" But at least in the United States of America and in many other countries, so I can't speak for Australia specifically, what do CEOs do before they join a company? The great majority of them, and the ones that are experienced, and in almost every public company in the United States, what do? They negotiate their separation agreement on day one before they even begin work. Right? They put in the protections in case they get fired or are forced out down the road, because they know that a board of directors on any day can decide, okay, we're getting rid of you. Now, they have leverage to do that. But I don't know a CEO in the world. I know there must be one or two, because I say this every time, but who goes into a company as a CEO and doesn't think they're going to make the company the best thing since sliced bread and get to grow the company or sell the company or whatever the goal is and do it really well, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be a CEO. But even though they all believe in themselves and they all believe they're going to make this company great, whatever company it is and whatever they're doing, and in whatever country, Australia perhaps aside, because I can't speak for it, that they're still protecting themselves from getting fired, because they know that things change. They know that somebody might want to replace them, for, by the way, because they do a bad job, or because they're doing a great job and somebody is firing them for economically irrational reasons. They don't like them. They want to put their buddy in place. They
Whatever
decided something went wrong 50 years ago, and they're going to fire them for that reason. So that's what.
So they come into the business with their separation agreement.
I call it a professional prenuptial agreement. That's exactly what they do. So hence, negotiate like a CEO is, if you, the regular employee, or you, the mid-level manager, you getting out of college, or you, a C-suite executive, wouldn't you want to do the same thing like the CEO if you have leverage, which is to negotiate like a CEO, which is to use their experience, the aggregate, and to protect yourself. And sometimes protection can be one sentence in an offer letter. A CEO might have a 12 or 15-page offer letter, but one of the things I talk about or employment agreement, but one of the things I talk about and negotiate like a CEO is, we all can sometimes put in a very powerful one sentence or two sentences that's in a 1 or 2 page offer letter that is as protective or more protective than in an employment agreement that goes on for 15 pages.
Interesting. So there must be some skill there. And negotiation, I suppose, and I'll get your thoughts on this, beneficial not just in that situation, but in all life aspects, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of life is about negotiation. I focus on in the business world and entrepreneurs and executives and employees and their employment and vis-a-vis investors. But it's we all negotiate in many different areas of life. And so sometimes some might say to better yourself, you have to negotiate with all sorts of people, including in your personal life. But the focus of my book is the professional world.
Yeah, but I suppose the skills can be transferable. A lot of the people I bring on this podcast share things that generally can be transferable to many aspects of life.
Oh, yeah. I mean, taking it aside from a very, a specific tool of negotiation, a more pleasant person that is more interactive with somebody is probably, on the whole, going to get along better with their board of directors, and alternatively with people outside surfing or at restaurants than will somebody otherwise, right? And they have an advantage. I think the social psychologists would tell you they have an advantage if somebody is likable in both circumstances. So there are certainly, that's outside of the actual specific skills. But yes, there are certainly skills that I talk about in my book that would be useful in private or regular life. I just don't focus on it there.
I appreciate that. What do you feel like the word negotiate has a negative connotation to some people, I guess to different people?
Unfortunately, that's the true statement. Particularly if you look at my country in the United States now, politically in the political world, it seems to be that there's, the two sides, and nobody wants to, everybody talks down on somebody who wants to negotiate and bridge the gap between the politics. So I'm just using that as that can then, as a you can extrapolate from that. It's often the case now that people take a particular view, whatever it is, X, and they don't want to, and somebody else has Y, and they speak down upon Y, for example, and they don't want to try to work out whatever X plus Y divided by 2 is, right? And so that's a problem. Whereas in the old days in America, of course, the old days by American standards, like Australia, is new, but if anybody in Europe's listening to this, they're like, what the hell is this guy talking about? But in the 1800s, we had politicians who were known as the great negotiator, right? It was considered a skill and something to be venerated, whether you can negotiate. And I think actually in the business world, unlike sort of what I was describing as this negative connotation in let's say the non-business world, it's very highly sought after. I mean, the best negotiators, at least for companies, are often what they call once was called executive worldwide, vice president of worldwide sales, executive vice president of worldwide sales, sometimes now known as the chief revenue officer. Those people are skilled at negotiation and building teams of negotiators. They're salespeople, but that's what they're doing. And so it's very good. Negotiators are very, very highly sought after in certain fields. I'm just saying, perhaps the body politic now has a terrible
No, it's a good point. How would you put a positive spin on the word negotiation or the practice of negotiating?
Getting along in life is integral. I think if you care about people and getting along with life, and negotiation is part of that in many parts of your life. So in a personal life and in public life, you may never call it negotiation in personal life or think about it that way, but compromise is something that can be good for all of us. And compromise is a form of negotiation, right?
So what there's probably a bunch of questions I could come here, but let's just go into the improving our negotiation skills. What sort of key points, or maybe a few points, that you'd suggest we focus on to improve our ability to negotiate?
First thing is start out and figure out what your goals are in any business negotiation. Where do you want to go? Secondly, consider yourself, are you a good negotiator? Consider your strengths and weaknesses. Some people are terrible negotiators, or they avoid negotiation because they're risk averse, because they're conflict avoiders. And if that's the case, then get some help, whether it's professional help or personal help or some wizened old person that's seen it before, so that you can maximize your returns in negotiation. A third point is try to figure out what the other side is thinking or what the other side's goals are. That's part of what the part of the theme of the book is. Know the potholes. So those potholes are out there. If you go into negotiation without full information, and one piece of that information is what the other side is looking for, what the other side is protecting themselves against, then you're going in not with full information, and so you're handicapped. So those are sort of three different tools that are important, or things I would say is important. There's many others, and at the end of every chapter in my book is a things to remember section with bullet points. So that would be you could just go read the bullet points at the end of all the sections, and then you would cover all the points.
So it makes sense to understand your goals and what you want in the situation, but also understanding what the other party wants and trying to figure that out. And I guess that comes down to skillful communication as well. Makes a lot of sense, because then you can find out the happy medium. I always find that negotiation sometimes has a term like, I'm going to win over the other person, but it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the dynamic and dynamics, but often a negotiation results in, a compromise, so that nobody gets 100% of what they want. But they hopefully both walk away, or both is metaphorical, could be multiple parties, could be companies, walk away satisfied with the result, and that's sort of the goal. So, and listen, sometimes there's a disconnect between the powers or the leverage in the negotiation, but even the party with little leverage will hopefully get something of what it wanted out of the negotiation.
How can you create leverage if you don't have much leverage? Like if you're an employee starting out at a company and don't have much leverage, obviously the company has more leverage because potentially they've got the upper card.
So that question that you just asked me presupposes that a newbie, if you will, a new person going in doesn't have any leverage. So that may be true, frankly. It's all context dependent. But in other circumstances, it's not. For example, coders who write code for software. In many places, they are very highly sought after. When they come out of college, I'm amazed to see how much money they make because they have leverage because there's not enough coders or not enough engineers in certain places. There are companies that start subsidiaries in other places. I know one in Australia because they feel they can get engineers cheaper and just as good as, say, Silicon Valley or some other place. But that means the engineer happens to be in Silicon Valley, might have leverage to negotiate. Again, I'm not talking about leverage like a CEO, but leverage to protect themselves in some way. What do I mean by protection? Again, this is an American an at-will concept, which is a little different than in other places where you have required separation and severance agreements. But part of leverage is guaranteeing yourself, for example, if you get fired, some amount of equity in your company, accelerated vesting. Protection would be guaranteeing yourself certain amount of pay on the back end when you're terminated or asked to go or asked to move on, that you get a certain amount of pay. In the case of the United States, certain kind of medical benefits as well that are paid by the company. These are kinds of protections that I'm describing. And you are correct. Generally, many people going into companies, a new employee, they're so desperate to get a job or they have no leverage because the company can hire somebody else that they don't have leverage at that point. But some do. And then throughout their career, they may have more. For example, they get a promotion and their choice is to go somewhere else or to take the promotion. Well, at that point, they have leverage, right? And so things, it's very dynamic. So it's all context dependent.
What are the signals, I guess, you'd pick up on in maybe negotiations where the other party's, trying to pull one over you without you notice? Because I think in some situations, and again, contextually based, but you can get quite excited about an opportunity and go into a negotiation without that, foresight.
So I'm sorry. So you're excited about, I think I missed the beginning part of the question. So you're excited about a situation. You're really excited about going into the whatever the job is or the investment is. And what was the first part of it?
Well, if the other party's trying to pull one over you, and you're not actually focused on the negotiations there.
Well, that's the problem, right? That's what I said. A lot of entrepreneurs, going back to that example, they're so excited to get funding that they don't look out for the potholes. They don't look out for themselves, and they assume that everything's going to go well. That's the same thing when you get excited about something. It doesn't matter what the job is or the entrepreneurship is or whatever it is in business. When you get really excited about it, that's great because that's going to be passionate. You're going to be really interested in doing it. So I don't want to take away from that, but you still should ask yourself in a jaded way, how do I protect myself from this situation? Because something might go wrong, and it often does. You could be excited, for 6 months, and then month 7, things go downhill for any number of reasons. And that's the whole point. Or if you want to go in and just allow yourself to be excited and take that job or take that investment or do that strategic business or whatever it is, or start a business with your family, whatever it is you're going to be doing, and you want to do that, at least coldly and calculatingly decide for yourself that you're not going to protect yourself. You're going to take that risk. You know what the potholes are, and you go into the relationship knowing that your eyes were wide open and you took the risk. That's the whole point. If you read my book, you'll know all the potholes or most of the potholes, because new potholes happen all the time, but you'll know the questions to ask to protect yourself on other potholes that I don't even know about yet. And if you don't have leverage, or you want to say, I'll take the risk, that's fine, as long as you do it with your eyes wide open and you've told yourself that that's what you're doing. Yeah,
that makes sense. Conflict in negotiations. What are the common errors you see coming up with people in negotiations?
Negotiations have life cycles. So, they have a beginning and an end, and the more experienced you are, the more you can see how they work out. So, people negotiate differently. And some negotiate, hardball all the time or whatnot. So there are all sorts of mistakes, quote unquote, that can be made over time. But perhaps I don't want to say it's the biggest. One of the mistakes is not understanding the life cycle of negotiation, and that somebody may be saying something or taking a position, but on day one, which if you're experienced or you've thought about it or you've figured out the other dynamics, the chances of them being in that same position on day 5 is low. They might be, but a lot of what it is in negotiation, as it is in other experiences in life, or even negotiating an employment agreement, for example, is risk taking, right? You always have to, there's always some risk that the other side will say no, or the other side will walk to the door. That's part of what part of your negotiation, your calculation. But still, just because there's conflict or somebody's taken an aggressive position or a position that's a deal breaker for you on day 1 doesn't mean it's going to be the same position on day 5.
Right. So I guess time sometimes would be a good suggestion for people in negotiations.
Yeah, take time and let things play out. Listen, they could play out in 30 minutes and that's over. But a lot of times in negotiation and there are people involved, right? We just talked about that. Everybody's different. And so it might take time, depending on what you're negotiating, to get to an answer. There are some deals that take months and months, if not years, to negotiate. I have employment agreements that I've assisted people in negotiating, clients in negotiation that take, that take months for sure, on both ends, employment end, change of control end, all ends, not just both ends. And then on separation agreements too.
I suppose time can be used as a tactic sometime, rather than give people time, give them less time to try and get decisions done quickly.
All the time. Both of those tactics on both ends of the spectrum can be used to one's benefit or against to one's detriment. That happens all the time. And so, there's one part of the book that I describe what I call the employment cram down, which is essentially when an acquirer taking over a target company. So now one company's bought the other, and they want to sign up all the new executives. They give them their employment agreements 48 hours before the close to try to force them to sign whatever the deal is on the table and not negotiate. I use that as one example.
You see that often, don't you?
Yeah, very often. And on the other end of the spectrum, sometimes people say, come back to me 2 months from now, even though they want the person, the other side, whoever it is, the company, to come back to them, in next day. But they say 2 months just to sort of play, put a lengthy time in the negotiation. And
but what is one final point you'd like to say about negotiating like CEO?
Go into every negotiation with your eyes wide open, business relationship with your eyes wide open, and protect yourself if you have any leverage at all. Whether you're starting out a business, whether you're in the middle of a business, whether you're taking an investment, whether you're starting out as an employee, whether you're a mid-level employee or a CEO, if you have any leverage at all, go in with your eyes wide open and protect yourself. Yeah,
no, good advice. So the book is available on Amazon, Negotiate Like a CEO. I'll put a link in the show notes for everyone to check it out. How's the book sales going, mate? How's the launch?
It's done quite well. I'm very pleased, and you can get it on Amazon or you can go to the website negotiatelikeaceobook.com and learn a little bit more about me and about the book. And I think there are one thing we didn't talk about there too. There are some excerpts on the book in there. One of the things we didn't talk about is that there are 59 short fictional stories that I made up, which are repeat stories of events that happen over and over again. Think of them like genres, like you have an action movie or a thriller movie or a romance movie. So these kind of stories happen over and over again in the entrepreneurial and executive world. And I wrote them. I wrote them to underscore the facts that I'm writing about and the factual advice I'm writing about. And so there's a couple of those excerpts on the website as well if you wanted to get a little taste. But otherwise, you can go to Amazon. It's available to buy. And if you're in the States, at least, you can get it delivered the next day by Prime. Yeah, it's pretty amazing delivery these days, isn't it? Quick. It's pretty amazing how Amazon does that, but good for me as an author selling a book. Absolutely. Well, congratulations on the book, and thank you for coming on and sharing. Thank you very much. It's great to be on your show, Lee, and best of luck to you and all your listeners. Thanks, guys. Check it out at thehiddenwhy.com. Until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon. Thanks, guys, for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. I hope you love what you're hearing. If you like this episode, guys, or any of the episodes that you're listening to here at The Hidden Why,
please do me a favor by sharing it. You can share it with your families, you can share it with your loved ones. You can do that by using your favorite social media channels, using the icons on the platform that you're listening to the Hidden Why podcast. Also, guys, if you're a fan of the show, please connect with me. Connect with me at thehiddenwhy.com. I love to hear from you. I love to converse with the people that listen to this show to find out what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, and perhaps if they have any questions or feedback for the show as well. You can stay up to date with all that I'm releasing here, guys. I do a solo show every Monday, a 3-minute thought every Thursday. I do 2 interviews a week on a Wednesday and a Saturday, and a book review every Friday. You can stay up to date with all that by subscribing to my newsletter at thehiddenwhy.com. Just enter your email address there, and also subscribing to the podcast on the platform that you choose to listen to your podcasts. You can also support the show, guys, by using the Amazon links at thehiddenwhy.com. So if you like books, you can get all the books that I review there, and anything else really that you like to purchase through Amazon. So use that link, it helps support the show. And we've also got a deal with Audible, guys. Audible is a fantastic way to listen to all your favorite books. We've got a deal with them so you can get 2 free books when you subscribe subscribe to a 30-day free trial. So check that out again at thehiddenwhy.com. Guys, that's it from me. You know what to do. Go out there, breathe more passion into every single moment. Do everything with greater purpose. And in doing so, you will discover your hidden why. This is The Hidden Why. My name is Lee Martinuzzi. Until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon.